Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. Today is Thursday, March the 7th, 2019. It's 4 p.m. in New York, 1 p.m. in Los Angeles, 9 p.m. in London, and in Sydney, Australia, it's about 8 a.m., I believe, in the morning. But wherever you are in the world, thank you for tuning in for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And the only sad thing going on today is that Steve Rowell had to go deal with some family stuff that was very important for him to deal with. But I tell you, Steve is like the best co-host that I have. I've got like 10 plus co-hosts, and if he has to take time, he'll find somebody to replace him, which is unbelievable. It's wonderful that he does that. Last time, he brought us his coach, Dan Mangino, who was just a fabulous interview. And this time, he sent us another person who works with Dan, Brenda. Brenda Florida is also a life coach, and she's a business mentor. We're going to find out more about what that's about. But she kind of stepped in at the last minute, and just before the podcast, she was telling me how it was so cool. She manifested being on a podcast today. So I'm so glad to be your manifestation. Thank you for joining us, Brenda.
Thank you for being my manifestation.
There you go.
I'm super happy to be here.
Isn't that cool how that works when there's a manifestation? There's more than one person involved. It's for both of them.
It really is.
It's
totally cool.
It's great. It's wonderful. So tell us a little bit about Brenda. What's Brenda like? I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time, I gather, but tell us who you are and what you've been doing and what's cool.
Absolutely. So I actually have only been certified as a life coach for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. I worked full-time in the real estate business industry here in the U.S., mostly in Pennsylvania and North Carolina, for about 30 years. So this is how the business mentor ties in.
Got it.
Because I have many years of business, experience in real estate. I didn't list and sell real estate a lot. I mostly ran real estate companies or managed offices, whatever. Okay. And I love business. But even within that, all the years that I did that, so much of what I was doing was developing people and developing their sales skills and all the limiting beliefs that go around that type of industry. And so when I decided to go into life coaching full time, which I really just went full time in June, the tagline for my business is live lavishly.
Ooh.
And that, yeah.
I like that.
I love it.
That's
it
nice.
feels so juicy to me. And it's
that's almost as good as live abundantly. I mean, that has the same kind of feel to it.
Yes, and that's exactly where that came from for me. Like I can't remember if I woke up in the morning or came out of a meditation, but in one of those sort of semi-altered states. And just this live lavishly, those two words came to me around my business, and that was really what it was about. Now I love, sort of 5-star living as well. And so I love that without, any shame and with abandon. But it's so much living a lavish life is so much bigger than, financial abundance. It's abundance in every way. It's that, ultimately as this evolves for me and my own journey evolves over the last several years, it's really about my own knowing that I am absolutely one with the divine, that there is no separation.
Yes.
And that to me is the ultimate in lavish, and what that really means to me. But anyway, so my coaching clients just sort of organically started moving towards people, typically solo entrepreneurs, most of them very creative, like Dan, who need help organizing their businesses and their systems and their things like that I'm quite good at. And then having that mindset and or creative collaborative person to work with, because being a solo entrepreneur, of course, is very sort of isolating.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I love playing both of those roles because I love helping people. I like to say I liberate people to their own wisdom. That's what I do as a coach. I liberate people to their own wisdom.
Well, that's cool.
And there's nothing that brings me more joy than that. And it just, everybody in business, I don't care what you do, you need to be liberated to your own wisdom. But I always say being an entrepreneur, I think is like being married. It's a relationship where you cannot avoid your own dysfunctions because it's so in your face, like a spouse is. Like, you can't pretend you don't have these things and they're not tripping you up. And so it's just an intense, way to live your life. I wouldn't have it any other way, but it also creates this great platform where I can help people in both arenas.
Absolutely. And also we have a second guest. Steve doesn't do things by halves. Steve doesn't get me just one guest. He gives me two life coaches as guests. And the second one is joined us, Jess Bubbico. Jess, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. How are you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me on here. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you just fine. You're doing great. Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that you were able to take the time to do this, and I mean, this is cool. This is great. I love it when the universe kind of shakes things up for me. I mean, Steve obviously had a little bit of a conflict that he couldn't get around today, which was fine. That happens. And then he sets it up so that I've got these two great people to talk with, and it's like, whoa, I wasn't even prepared for this. What do I do with this? This is fun. So tell us a little bit about you, Jess. I mean, what's your gig? I know you're also a life coach, like Brenda is, and I know that you also work alongside Dan. But and I know that you're an intuitive coach. I have talked to intuitive coaches before. I'm curious to know what your flavor of it is, so to speak. So tell us about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say hi to Brenda because I met Brenda yesterday on the phone.
Cool.
Which is pretty wild that we're now reunited here for a second time. And you have two very powerhouse ladies on here because I also manifested coming on the show today.
Woohoo! All right.
We must have done something right.
I think we all did. This is good.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, so my name is Jess Bubbico, and I am an intuitive medium and life coach. So I work with people who are beginning to open to their intuitive gift. And I help guide them through how they begin to open to that, as well as really understanding when they are in connection and alignment with their spirit, with their higher self, with their purpose. They're headed in the direction of their desires versus when they're really out of alignment. They're feeling frustrated. They don't know what the next step is for themselves. I teach them how to connect in with themselves, with their intuition, and really find their true north, find their path in life. And it's a lot of fun.
That's really good. Yeah. I love intuitive. When you say intuitive, that's connecting inside. Is there something specific that you have in mind or just connecting inside?
I teach people how to connect with their intuitive or psychic senses. I like to let people kind of choose which word resonates with them more. But I teach people how to connect with their clairs. So their clairaudient, clairvoyant, clairsentience, claircognizance. I teach people what their dominant intuitive sense is, and then how to use that to connect with their higher self, connect with that part of themselves that's infinite in their everyday life.
Very cool. Now, ladies, I also want to ask you about your connections with Dan, because you both have connections with Dan. I know you also connected to Steve through Dan. But tell us how each of you, I'll go to you first, Brenda. How do each of you work with Dan? What's your connection with him? How does it all fit together?
Yes. Well, Dan and I started our relationship by, I went to him for some coaching, then he came to me for some coaching, and then he invited me to be his COO.
Ooh,
so
nice.
I'm actually, his COO for Dreamer HQ. And so that's how we are connected and work together. And we still coach each other when we need it.
I've noticed that about life coaches.
Need it.
Life coaches are constantly coaching each other. It's just incredible how often that happens.
Yes. Well, because what good would we be if we didn't?
Well, true. Right? Yes.
Yeah. You have to live it to give it, I think. So, yeah.
I agree with you. And Jess, what's your connection with Dan?
Dan and I were in a class together, a manifesting class, and I was teaching I was teaching a portion of the manifesting class, and we just were both like, we saw each other on video, and I was like, I love that guy's energy, and he's like, I love your energy. So I think he direct messaged me on Facebook. We did each other's podcast, and then we had a radio show. It just evolved. We had so much fun on the podcast that it evolved into a radio show that we host on Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, called Method Meets Magic.
Yes.
He is the method. I am the magic. And we teach people how to live the life they desire.
And that radio show, what's the radio station that you're on?
It's 1150 KKNW. It's an AM station based out of Seattle, and the website for it is www.1150kknw.com, and you can listen in live on Mondays. Very
cool, yeah. You have a nice audience then tuning into you to be able to talk to every week. And that was actually always a dream of mine. I've been doing the podcast. This is my seventh year, I think. Yeah, seventh year doing the podcast. And for a number of years, it was just me and Joel Elston, who does the Thursday morning podcast with me. And every week we would talk about, whatever we were talking about during the show. And then afterward, we'd say, wouldn't it be great if we were doing this on radio? Well, you got there. You're doing it on radio. And I'm thinking, well, that must be so much fun to be interacting with a live radio audience every week. That's got to be great.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, I wasn't sure which way to go with this because I wasn't sure what I was going to hear from you ladies. This is cool stuff that you're telling us about. What we often do on Thursdays, I think I kind of want to go there today, is to bring in questions and comments both from our live stream audience, and also I like to go through the Facebook Law of Attraction groups and just call out some interesting questions that people have raised where they're asking for help on various issues that they're dealing with. I wanted to share one comment that Beth Ann had made. She said specifically to you, Brenda, it was meant for me to tune in today. I'm learning how to be in the world after a hard time in life. I'm now looking to learn more about how to save money or invest. I've been really into LOA for about a year now. I spent all of my 401k getting a divorce and starting a new life, and now I need to begin again. My job doesn't have a 401k, and I need to do something on my own. I know nothing about this, and I'm looking for some honest advice. So what can you tell Beth Ann?
I love some of my favorite clients are clients that are working towards really allowing financial abundance in their lives. And I think that in Jess, I don't know if you'll agree with this, but probably so, but I know that when I look at my coaching career, whether it's on the business side, the business mentoring side, or just, one-on-one coaching, that I attract the clients that are going through the same things I go through, right? And so it's just that sort of mirror thing. And so I love that. So I've had a number of financial, I call them initiations because I don't like the word challenge.
Okay.
And they initiate me into my next highest level, of what I'm willing to allow in my world. And so it sounds to me like she's in the exact same, spot. And I've been divorced, I don't say this like a badge of honor, but I've been divorced twice. And so I know what that's like and the sort of amount that you have to start over and how it changes your perception of what you're doing in your life, what you want to attract in your life, and how finances and the abundance piece fit into that. And it's abundance in every way, besides finances and career, in attracting another relationship when you're ready for it, just all the things we can open ourselves up to. So I think it's a super worthy journey. And you just, I think a coach really helps. I don't think any of us were really meant to do this thing alone, this thing called life, and having someone who is objective, who isn't invested or has an agenda for what we should do to be able to talk to. That's why I always have a coach, and they don't have our blind spots. Every person literally physically has blind spots because of the way our brains work. And so you need somebody who can see, who doesn't have those and can see exactly what's going on. So I really encourage you on that journey. Is it Beth Ann? Is that
Beth
what you
Ann,
said?
yes.
Yes, Beth Ann, because, and get the help that you need to support you because it's all the more important now, in this place that you're at.
Absolutely. And by the way, she followed up and said, I'm 51 and I feel financially abundant and I have more coming in than going out. So some good stuff's going on there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's really good. So good stuff. Jess, you want to jump into what can you tell Beth Ann?
Yeah. I had a mentor once who talked to me about the law of polarity. And I remember her saying that for as sad or as in debt or, as you are in one direction, like as the lack of abundance as you have in one direction, which isn't even really a lack of abundance. If I think about debt, it's, you have an abundance of debt, right? I mean, like it's abundance in either direction. It's either abundance in the direction of debt or abundance in the
it's one that I know well, I can tell you. I know it very, very well. So I'm totally on board with you.
Yeah. And so, she always used to say to me, as much abundance as you have in one direction is as much abundance as you can have in the other direction when it comes to like the law of polarity. So if you can have an abundance of debt in one direction, you can have an abundance of amassing wealth in the opposite direction. And that for some reason always stuck in my head, that it made me really remember that like nothing is ever permanent. And even if I'm feeling really stuck, or I'm feeling like at this point in time, you know, I have an abundance of debt, or I have an abundance of no dates, or whatever it is that I'm dealing with in my life, I always recall that to mind, and remembering that this is just a snapshot in time. And especially with money is something that comes and goes. Money likes to have, I've found for myself, money likes to have a purpose. If I don't have a purpose for what I desire the money for, it oftentimes doesn't show up until I'm like, I really have a purpose for you now. I got to pay rent, or whatever it may be in my life. So, I like to just offer to Beth Ann too, that like, this is a snapshot in time. And I'm sure there's something that she's, this financial initiation, as Brenda put it, I love it, is showing up to help her perhaps look at her thoughts and look at what she believes in. So it sounds like a really beautiful time to kind of sit back and like Brenda said, you know, I believe you can't read the label from inside of the bottle. So it sounds like a great opportunity to perhaps, you know, have an outside perspective who can help you gain some clarity about what's going on in your mind, what you're thinking, what you're putting out into the world, the way that you're showing up, as well as to give yourself a little bit of grace too. And it sounds like she's gone through a big transition in her life as well. So, having grace and remembering that this is just a snapshot in time, that anything is possible, I think can be helpful.
I know what both of you are talking about when you talk about how it's important to have someone to talk to, because, like I said, I was doing the podcast for a number of years. It was just Joel and I once a week. And about a year and a half ago, I started to get really, really hungry. I wanted to do lots and lots of episodes. So I started finding other life coaches and so forth to connect to, and brought them on board as co-hosts. And it's grown to the point now where not just life coaches, I actually have other friends too, and people who are very expert at law of attraction who join me. But all told, I think I have 10 co-hosts right now. There's nothing, absolutely nothing like having 10 different perspectives to talk to every single week. It's just an amazing thing. So yeah, I'm totally on board with what you guys are talking about. Let's see, I have some other questions too from the Facebook groups. I figured we could go through each of those and see what you guys think about them. And it's interesting. It varies from day to day what the questions are that you can find on there that people are raising that are important to them. Some of the questions we experienced this morning was with Joel. And Joel commented to me afterward, wow, those are some of the most in-depth relationship questions we've had in a long time. And they were. This afternoon, the questions are a little bit lighter. A lot of them are also relationship related, but some of them are a little bit more general. So I think there's going to be a lot of room for you ladies to weigh in and give us your opinions on them. But let's go through them one at a time. First one comes from, I hope I'm not pronouncing her name wrong. I think it's Sanjana. She says, I manifested my ex back. Now, you see a lot of that. I know you ladies have seen that. You see a lot of people saying, how do I get my ex back? Well, she did it. She got her ex back. And then she says, we're together now, but I don't feel the attachment like I used to feel before. It's a dilemma. What should I do about it? Do you guys ever get that kind of response from somebody? I actually got him back, and it wasn't what I expected.
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I think romantic relationships there's the number of things, and so what we're attracted to and what we can also be repelled by. So I think that because what she's saying there is she's not feeling the same connection. That's the word she used. Yeah, so that to me is really meaningful. And I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what that means, right? Maybe Jess will know because I am not clairvoyant. That one's not my intuitive gift. But I think that it's just a really important key, and I would just really encourage you not to dismiss it. I think often in romantic relationships, I'm going to say this obviously from the perspective of a woman, because that's what I've been my whole life this time, is that we're often taught and sort of, cultured to dismiss things about our partner that are rubbing us the wrong way, or make excuses for it, or, because nobody's perfect and you can't feel close all the time, and all those things we hear. And we will dismiss our own intuitive knowing that something is, amiss in some way, doesn't mean something's wrong with him, doesn't mean anything's wrong with you, but something is happening to create that disconnect. And I would just encourage her to explore that in a super non-judgmental way. Very non-judgmental. Judgment never helps. My blog this morning was on loving yourself into your next, transition, or your next level that you want to get to, because we tend to think we need to discipline ourselves and work really hard and, all those things, browbeat ourselves, to our next thing. And it really isn't sustainable. I'm very obsessed with the concept of sustainable transformation. And so I only want to do things that are really sustainable, and love is incredibly sustainable. Hard work and discipline and, self-criticism, are not good for us to sustain. So I would just hold that nugget, and it could teach you a lot about what's going on for you and what might be going on in your relationship.
I should also clarify, you said that the word was connection. I kind of said okay to that, but I realized afterward the word she used was attachment, which is a little bit different from connection.
Oh, so, attachment.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah, so that could have a whole nother level of things where you could get into, this is where all manner of things around codependency and whether or not we really have a healthy attachment or an unhealthy attachment. I'm an expert at this because I've done it for 30 years and then learned how to quit doing it.
Yes.
But attachment, that has a real different, potential, feel to it, and a whole different layer of issues around it potentially.
Yeah. Jess, what do you think? Brenda's covered a lot here. It hasn't left you a whole lot of territory to cover.
Sorry.
Yet, but,
Brenda, that was beautiful. It was beautiful. I'm like, yes, and. So that's good. I think
yes.
too, what's great is we can look at, I believe that, there could be somebody listening to this who maybe got back together with their ex and said, gosh, the connection is different, and needed to hear that too. That was some great wisdom, on paying attention, trusting yourself. We manifest and create things in our lives because we desire to feel a certain way. I want to manifest a boat because I have an idea in my head that when I have a boat, I'll feel worthy, and that's why I'm manifesting the boat.
Right.
I think that relationships are very similar. And I think it's really interesting that she's talking about attachment because, relationships are a really great place they're a great mirror for you to see, again, those aspects of yourself that you're unable to see if you're just kind of going through life solo. That can be a reason why people avoid relationships as well, because,
Yes.
you can't hide when somebody else is looking at you and saying, what you just did made me feel this certain way, or whatever it may be. So you really have to take a deep look at yourself in relationship. And as well, I think in terms of attachment, I'm really curious to know in which way she grew through that relationship, because it sounds like when she went back into the relationship, they had a very different point of attraction. So let's say, just for example, she went into the relationship and her point of attraction was, I don't feel good about myself and I have low self-esteem. Just an example. And this can be subconscious. I have low self-esteem and I'm looking for somebody to connect with who makes me feel loved. They break up. She goes on this soul searching journey and she realizes like, oh my gosh, I'm learning how to love myself. she gets back together with the ex. And, after she goes on this journey, the point of attraction may be very different now because she's not looking for or seeking a partner to complete her. The point of attraction may be that it's more of she's looking for somebody to just share in life with. So she doesn't feel that she needs to be as dependent or codependent on this person. Maybe it feels like a really loving friendship now. So the point of attraction has changed, perhaps within the both of them. So I'd be really interested to know a little bit more about what shifted within her, what shifted within him, and if it's in alignment with what she desires, like the type of relationship that she desires to have in her life now.
It's a great point, and I don't have the answer for you because I'm not directly tied into that particular thread right now. But it reminds me of my relationship with my wife because we met when we were in our early 40s, and one of our topics of conversation after we met was, why didn't we meet before this? We're so good with each other. And one of the first answers my wife gave, now my wife has a background as a psychotherapist. She was a therapist for 10 years. So she has, quite a bit of background with this stuff. And her reaction almost instantaneously was, if you had met me 10 years ago, you would have turned running and screaming in the opposite direction. I was so codependent. There was no way we could have worked until I worked on my stuff. And I realized I also had to work on my stuff too. So it works both ways. The fact is, once we worked on our stuff and got it kind of sorted out and out of the way, it was really easy for us to connect. And that's the thought that goes through my mind. I mean, this particular person, Sanjana, wanted to reconnect with somebody, like you said, who she probably had some kind of, you fill a gap for me kind of a thing going on. And then perhaps, like you suggested, maybe that changed. And if it changed, then, like you said, the dynamic of the relationship would be different because just as she wasn't looking for somebody now to fill her hole, he, who might have been looking to fill somebody's hole, couldn't fill a hole for her anymore. And that affects both sides of the relationship. It isn't just her side; it affects both sides. So, I mean, I'm amazed that they actually got together if something like that was actually going on, because that's kind of a hard connection to make the second time. That's my take on it, anyway. I mean, what do you think?
I think it's interesting.
Go ahead, Jess.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm used to one co-host, and here I have two. I'm thinking, oh, no, you can't say one. You've got to say it by name. Okay. Jess, why don't you go ahead and answer?
Well, and I was going to say, Brenda and I talked on the phone, I think, for like almost an hour and a half yesterday. So you've got two ladies who have the gift of gab in a really beautiful way and love to share from their heart. So I think
Fabulous.
It's really good. So it's, again, I think we kind of took a scenario and kind of put some extra detail. I took a scenario and put some extra details into what happened. I don't exactly know what happened with the
it's
person,
speculative.
But I think if Kyle Cease is somebody that he's a coach. He's amazing, and I follow a lot of what he does. And he talks about sometimes with the universe, we are desiring something, and it's like having a dog that wants the treat. So, like, the universe is the person holding the treat, and the dog is us. And, anytime you take a treat out of a bag, a dog is going to want to jump at your hand to get the treat.
Right.
But us as the universe, as the person holding the treat, goes, hold on, sit, okay, lay down. Okay, now you're ready to receive this thing that I have for you. And I think with relationships in general, they're really powerful mirrors, and they're powerful teachers of things that, like you were saying with your wife, like there were things you both needed to learn about yourself in order to be ready to fully show up in the way that you did, to support each other, to connect with each other, and to honestly co-create a life togetger.
Absolutely.
So I think, I can't remember what your question was.
Oh, I was just asking whether or not...
circling back around.
No, that's right. I was just asking what you thought about how I had embellished on what you had embellished on, because we both kind of embellished on what the original question was, because we really weren't sure exactly what her situation was and how she ended up attracting him back. But you had postulated the idea, well, maybe she had done some work on herself and then had managed to get him back. And I postulated the idea, well, that makes it even more complex, because if he was wanting to connect with somebody who had that prior issue, and that issue is no longer there. Now they've got a tough dynamic trying to make this thing work. No wonder that she's finding that the feeling is different. That's what I was going to ask you. I was trying to ask you, what do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I think anything is possible. I again would love to know more about it, but I do think, relationship, if it's coming back around again, then there could be something for them to, again, learn as they're growing into themselves and into their truth and who they're truly here to be.
All I can say is the people that I selected for their questions today, they're going to find themselves with so much information. It's going to be about trying to swim out from under it. I mean, you ladies are fabulous in terms of all the different ideas you can pass on. Let's see what we can do with the next question that I found, because this one's a really cool question for anyone who knows the movie The Secret. I don't think I've ever seen this question before, and that's why I selected it. Tiffany asked, what does Bob Proctor mean in The Secret when he says, you can cook a man's dinner with electricity, but you can also cook the man? And then she laughs and says, I've never figured that one out. I've never seen that question before, so I had to bring it in. So I'll go to Jess this time, because I went to Brenda first time. So Jess, what do you think? What's the answer to Tiffany's question about Bob Proctor's comment?
Gosh, this is one where I wish you had asked Brenda first.
Oh, well, I can go to Brenda first if you want,
Let's go to Brenda first. I need to simmer on this.
Okay,
one.
That's okay.
I need to get cooked a little.
So while Jess is cooking over in the background, you want to take a stab at this one, Brenda?
Yes. Tell me the quote again.
Okay, the quote is from The Secret, and at one point Bob Proctor says, you can cook a man's dinner with electricity, or you can also cook the man. And I can remember the fuller context of it was his point was that no one really understands how electricity works. And so this is his way of kind of elucidating on that idea.
Yeah, so what that connects for me, and this may be totally off in left field.
Well, the question's in left field, so that's okay. It works.
So I'll tell you where that hits me is just that. Like, so I'm going to take it back to what I said when we first started talking about this idea of oneness with the divine, oneness with the universe. And so the electricity is almost the middleman to cooking the man, right? Mm-hmm. And I have no idea if that's what Bob Proctor meant, but that's how that feels to me is we get very seduced in our 3D lives with things like electricity, all the how is it going to happen? Right? Talking specifically about the law of attraction.
Yes.
It's one thing to identify what I yearn for is the word I like, or what my desires are, what I'm wanting to attract. It's another thing to let go of the how is that going to come into my life. So are we going to use electricity, or are we going to cook outside in our camper, stove, or are we going to build a, fire out in the wood? Like, and I can be a very controlling, detail-oriented person. And so I can get really caught up on, but wait, I have to figure out how. How am I going to cook that? Instead of just saying, no, I'm just clear. I want a cooked man. I want a man for sure. I'm not sure I want him cooked. But anyway, you get my point. And not worry about how that's going to happen. So I don't know. That's how that hits me just in my own.
I think you're on the right track there. I mean, from what I remember of that segment of the movie, he was trying to make the point that when people are trying to learn how to be deliberate creators using the law of attraction, one of the first things they're trying to understand is, well, how does this stuff work? Yeah. And his point is, you don't have to know how it works. It's like you don't have to know how electricity works to turn on a light switch. Anybody who can turn on a light switch can turn on a light. You don't have to understand electricity at all. And I think that's what the point of his quote was. There are a lot of different ways to use electricity. It doesn't really matter how it works. You don't have to know how it works. You don't have to understand how vibration it works. You don't have to understand how the attraction actually happens. You just have to go out and do the attracting.
Yes. So can I tie that into a business?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Then?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the same thing. Like when I'm coaching people in with their businesses, and I do it myself to grow my own business. It's this idea that we have this image of our business, what, maybe how big we want it to be, how many clients we want to have, what our reach is in social media, whatever. We have those things. But if we get too tied into how exactly we're going to make that happen, we get really attached to the outcome. We can get really controlling, and we get caught in this loop of like success, failure, and everything gets labeled one of those. Oh, it worked. I got 100 views on my video. Oh, it's a failure. I got 2 views. When the truth is, just like I said at the beginning, this morning I woke up not knowing I was going to be in front of any of these beautiful people that we're now, Jess and I are both lucky enough to be in front of, and I couldn't have orchestrated that except in my 3D, like, let me control this and create a bigger audience for myself. I just have this intention, right, of growing a business or of helping a client grow theirs. And we have to leave some of the how it's going to happen up to the magic of the universe to provide for us. And those things come in the easiest way, just like today for me. And the most fruitful in my experience in my business, the things that have made me the most money have also come to me by the easiest methods.
That's good. Those are good. So, Jess, you've been sitting there kind of cooking away on this. Do you have a meal to serve to us now?
We can make so many jokes about this. I want to be like, I'm marinating over here.
Yeah, there
you go. Okay. Yes. So I agree with Brenda and the wondering, how we aren't really in control of how it's going to happen. I'm going to take a different view or perspective on this, in that I'm hoping a very small percentage of your listeners, hopefully none, but a very small percentage, don't actually want to cook a human.
I hope
that's
not.
a non-desirable thing for them to want to do, right? But we do all want to cook food. I don't actually love cooking, but I do have the desire for somebody else to cook and create food for me.
You and my wife.
It makes me think about, if I look at it from a different perspective, the law of attraction is going to work for things that are desirable and undesirable in our life in the exact same way. Whether I think about the fact that I don't want my boyfriend to dump me, and I'm going to think that over and over and over and over and over again, versus the idea that I would love to have somebody who we have a great relationship, we desire to be together, we want to spend time together, we want to have fun. Either way, it doesn't matter how it happens. If that's the outcome that I focus on, that's the outcome that I'm going to end up attracting to me. So, for me, if I take a zoomed out look and think of it try to just offer a different perspective from what Brenda said, because I agree with her, idea on how, and I think this is sort of a different variation of that. It's the law of attraction. It's going to work. Whatever you focus on is whatever you focus your emotions, your thoughts, and your actions on it's gonna show up in your life, desirable or undesirable.
Isn't that annoying? I mean, that annoys me to no end. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh, pisses me off. Yeah.
You know what though? I think it's such a beautiful opportunity for growth though, because I started to be able to, since I've started, studying the law of attraction and studying manifesting and teaching classes on manifesting, it's made me have this awareness of going in the moment, okay, what am I believing? And then realizing how incredibly powerful we are, that we can shift in a moment and go, oh my gosh, I didn't really realize that I was thinking below the surface that, I'm not good enough. And so I didn't really, I didn't show up fully. And I started to see, what occurred in the universe, what happened around me because of it. So I think it's a really cool lens for personal development and growth.
I agree with you. Yeah. In fact, that's one of the favorite themes of Joel's. Joel Elston, who does the Thursday morning podcast with me, he waxes eloquent about the value of struggle. He thinks that it's probably the most important thing that any human being can have in their life in terms of having a platform to move into the next realm of where their life is going. And he points to the struggles he's had in his own life, and he's had some incredible struggles, and he's also had some unbelievable outcomes, just amazing life he's had. So I totally get where he's coming from, and here you are echoing the same thing that he's saying. So yeah, it just sounds right. It feels right to hear that. That's really good. So okay, that was a fun question. That was out in left field. Let's come back into a little bit more into the norm. This is a question from another Brenda. And this Brenda is saying, I need some advice. I live with my parents, and my mom is so toxic. When she's away from me, I feel so good, but recharged. But when she's around, she does nothing but call me a failure, an idiot, compares me to other people, says they're doing so much better, criticizes me, says I'm a nobody and that I won't get anywhere in life. She just drains me so much. I have tried attracting a job, but no luck, or money so I can move out because it has come to the point where I feel physically sick from everything I have to hold in. So Brenda's dealing with some pretty serious stuff at home there. Which one of you ladies want us to try to help Brenda out first?
Do you want to start, Brenda? We could do the Brenda thing.
Well, you can start this time. I mean, you go first.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of things I would say here. When we continue to engage in a relationship, because I think, number one, I work with a lot of people who are they're very clairsentient. And when you're clairsentient, you're very sensitive to the energy that's around you. So you're sensitive to the energy of people around you. You may be very sensitive to the energy of the environment that you're in. So if you're in a messy environment, even just having a messy environment can weigh on your energy pretty heavily as well.
Sure.
So when I think about what she's saying, and I think it would be really important to examine what stories are going on within her about herself. So whatever her mom is saying about her, you're a failure, you're not good enough, everyone else is better than you. I would want to know which one of those statements, what of those things that her mom is saying about her, does she actually believe about herself as well? I think it's a really important to ask yourself too, like, do I actually believe those statements? Because it's easy to just say, you're putting it on me, you're telling me I'm not good enough, you're telling me this, that, and the other thing. But the bottom line is it's really important to ask yourself, and do I believe that? Is this my truth right now too? It doesn't mean it's the absolute truth of the universe, because we know that no one's a failure at all in life in general. And so it's important to say, what of those things are you believing about yourself? Because if you're embodying I'm a failure, then you're going to be silently sending that signal out everywhere you go. And it's going to show up in your body language. It's going to show up in the way that you show up at a job, things like that. I would say if she really truly has a desire to shift her reality, start looking at, okay, do I want a place for myself? Or am I kind of because sometimes we find comfort in the sameness. My mom's telling me I'm a failure. I kind of feel like I'm a failure, but it's creating this perpetual loop where I actually feel comfortable because I'm more comfortable with the idea of I'm a failure than I am comfortable with the idea of I'm a huge success. Start looking at what does a supportive environment look like for me? Start daydreaming. I would love to, be able to have an apartment, a modest apartment that's at a certain part of the city. Start thinking about what you actually desire. And I think it's a really good idea for her to start tuning into herself and what she wants for herself. And maybe start spending more time outside of home where you do those things. Go to a park, daydream on a bench, ask yourself what you desire, and make a really conscious effort to start getting clear on that so you can start to send a clear message out to the universe. Because if you decide, you know what, I've decided I really want to get my own place and I know what I want it to feel like and what I want it to look like, you're going to show up very differently in all areas of your life. You might go to a coffee shop and look at the board where there are apartments and realize like, wow, I actually can afford an apartment more than I think I could. Or you may open yourself to talking to friends and say, hey, do you know of a place where I could stay? And somebody says, hey, I got an extra bedroom and I'm going to charge you no rent for it. And you can stay here as long as you'd like. So I think really important is to, step number one, ask yourself, yes, I know it's easier to look at my mom and say that she's saying these things about me and now I feel this certain way. And again, if she's somebody who's pretty empathic, you can pick up on this stuff and you feel it. And then ask yourself, what am I believing and what do I want to believe? What do I want to believe about myself? What do I desire to create for myself? If I want an apartment, what do I start thinking about what you want? Because again, it's like cooking the man. You're thinking about the stuff you don't want and you're thinking about how it's affecting you. And so you're creating an undesirable outcome.
That's such a good point,
that
too,
would be
Jess.
my advice.
I mean, that's a great point that we tend to get stuck into comfort zones that really aren't all that comfortable. But they can be comfort zones like, well, yeah, I know my mom abuses me. Yeah, I don't get treated nice. I get all this lousy stuff. But it's so much easier than having to move out. And even though she said, she was very clear that she wants to be able to move out, but nevertheless, even with that kind of desire, we can still get ourselves stuck in that so-called comfort zone that really isn't comfortable.
She may be addicted to the story of my mom is always really mean to me, and then that causes her to get attention and love from other people as well. And we can go unconscious to that at times. So I would look at what is the reward that I'm getting from continuing to perpetuate this story about my mom.
Yeah, that's it. So how about Brenda? How about one Brenda to another? What else can you tell her?
Wow. Well, Jess, that was genius in every single way, and I totally agree with everything. I would do everything. Brenda, do everything Jess said. And, you know, it reminds me, so this is how women get stuck in abusive relationships with men. You know, not that it can't happen with the opposite genders or women with women, men with men. But the same things can happen with a parent like that, like is happening for our Brenda here. And I always know that any time in my life when I'm thinking, if so-and-so would change, or if my circumstance would change, I would be fine. Because this isn't me. You know, this is because I've got this toxic mother, I've got this horrible boss, I've got this financial problem, whatever. And that's just always your sign that that is not true. Because we are all the creators of our lives, exactly like Jess said before, good or bad. You know, the law of attraction is obeying everything it is that we are seeking, whether we're really, you know, whether it's positive or negative for us. And so again, like we've said before, she's attracting this toxicity to a degree because she's not willing to give it up, right? The universe is showing us, mirroring us what we need to change or shift. So if somebody's toxic to us in ways that we do not believe about ourselves, we don't have a story. So if you told me I was ugly, okay, because I think I'm a pretty woman, okay? And, we could all start singing right there. No, we won't start singing. But in my gut, like I believe I'm attractive, okay? So if you said, or I heard you told somebody, wow, loved having Brenda on the show, but I kind of wish the video was off because she's one homely girl. Oh. I would just, like, whatever, I would laugh. I would think, wow, I don't know what's wrong with you, but whatever, you know, like it wouldn't trigger me. There would be no emotional response for me for that because I don't believe it. But if I had my own story that I'm not very attractive, I mean, any sort of hint in that direction from you will trigger me right into my story. And now I'm allowing you to criticize me because it's already something I believe. We cannot be insulted from another in any way other than ways that we insult ourselves. So ultimately, Brenda's freedom is going to be to value herself, whether her mother ever values her or not, because then her mother can say those hurtful things, and those things no one should have to hear from anyone, let alone their own mother. But you can hear them without the pain of that emotional trigger. Now, that being said, I have to add one huge caveat here, and that is that environment does matter. And I will say, because I have been in emotionally abusive relationships before, and I've worked with some women in similar situations, and I always will say, listen, you do not have to get your shit together before you leave. Like, the truth of whether or not you can stand in your truth of being this beautiful, wonderful, smart person isn't measured by whether you can stand in that in front of a person who's abusing you. So just get the hell out, okay? So I think there's value also in changing your environment as long as you know you're taking you with you. And the only reason any of us allow a man, a mother, any other person to have that level of emotional abuse with us is because at some level we are believing it. We have a story that believes that. Otherwise it would fall out of our lives and we would just laugh it off, dismiss it, you know, as I would from you if you told me you didn't think I was attractive. But environment matters, and sometimes we have to free ourselves from the environment before we can really get the deeper pieces of ourselves back to create the full healing. Does that make sense?
It does. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only thing I can add is pretty woman walking down the street. But I agree with you completely. I love the answers you guys are giving here. These are really good. It kind of reminds me, I mean, what we're really bringing up here is just how we're able to, against our own best judgment, attract in the very thing that we don't want, just by focusing on it over and over and over again. It's what my wife, when she was doing therapy, what she would tell her clients, she'd say, this is an FGO. And I asked, what's an FGO? She says, it's a friggin' growth opportunity.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is.
That.
Yeah.
I'm so using that.
Isn't that good? I like that.
I love that. I don't usually say freaking, but okay, we can use that.
Well, I try to keep it up. That's actually not what she said, but I tried to clean it up a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
We try to make it G-rated on the show wherever we can.
Okay.
So.
Well, I said a curse word in my answer. Sorry.
That's right. I skipped over it.
I have a little bit of a potty mouth, so
we're not prudes. We just try to keep it nice.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah.
By the way, Brenda, also Jeffrey, who's also one of our live stream listeners, add in a question. This goes back to 2 or 3 questions back, so you have to kind of do a little jump back. But when you were talking about being in that loop and needing to get out of the loop, he says, how do we get out of the loop you describe? How do we not care about the outcome that we put so much energy and focus on?
Yeah, there's the $64 million question.
Right.
It's something I focus on a lot. It's something I ask other people that I find to be successful. I like to know how they do it. But for myself, this may sound a little esoteric, and I don't mean for it to, because I'm a very pragmatic person. But to a degree, it's about trust. Because see, if I totally trust that my business is going to grow, or that I'm going to be taken care of, and not by another person, by myself in the universe, then whatever circumstance shows up, whatever thing that may look like a failure or didn't go the way I wanted it to, or whatever, just becomes another freaking growth opportunity, and helps me see the contrast, right? So where was I having a thought that wasn't consistent with the outcome I said I wanted, right? That's how we find those things. And so if I'm looking at it that way, I don't have to control the outcome, because I know, I'll just use a dramatic example because it makes it easier to make the point. I said, I want to have a successful business, and that's what I want to attract, and I don't want to be attached to that outcome. Okay? So if that's true, that means I have to be willing to trust that even if my business completely failed, I'm okay, because that's just going to take me to my next lesson, and my next level. And then maybe the next thing I do is even more wildly successful than I even imagined and wanted for this business. So when you can insert another level of story, it's almost like dreaming about your future, okay? And imagine it in an even better way. And so, I don't know how I'm going to get there, so I don't have to be attached to all the different ways I try to get there. I can just put them out there, see what works, almost like a scientist or it does it in an experiment, to say, oh, does this work? Does that work? Oh, no, yes, maybe, whatever. But ultimately, I think what it's coming down to for me is trusting that I am the mind. If I know 100% that I am the mind that creates my life, I just go create something different. And that's really, really powerful. And as I grow into being able to 100% believe that myself, and trust me, that's a journey. Okay. I used to just really, I would say I was a person of faith, and I had all sorts of belief, that things would happen, and da-da-da. What I really meant was if I could control it, I believed in it. I know that
really.
I didn't say it that way, but that's what I meant. So then you start going into this, the unknown. And I have chosen, especially in the last 6 months, to very consciously take my life into areas where I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't necessarily know, my finances, my living, my whatever, all kinds of different things. But I'm going to trust that I am the mind that is going to create it. And so I'm okay. And whatever doesn't work, I'll get an idea. I'll get an inspired action. I come back home to that center of oneness with the divine or with the universe and go find that inspired action and go do that. I don't know. Does that sound too airy-fairy?
Not at all. In fact, Jess, it sounds like she's almost impinging on your territory here. Isn't that exactly what you do?
Yes, I love it though. And I think this again comes back to like the idea of like nothing, we didn't talk about this before, but like nothing is separate. Like our intuition, the way we listen, the way we trust, like is an integral, I always, when I first started working in more of an energetic realm, it was a lot of like connecting with people's family members who had passed away and things like that. And it's like, everything is energy. Like you can read the energy of an object. You can do anything like that. So this idea, like nothing is separate. Everything is made of energy. And this idea that you're talking about of trust and like trusting that there is something greater that I'm going to be led towards, I think it can be looped through any and all parts of life. It's just like I was saying about the dog, like the dog sitting down before he gets the treat and the universe kind of being like, you need to learn something first. Yeah, trust that what you're doing now, we have hopefully, knock on wood, a long life journey ahead of us. And so the more that I can think about life as a journey where I'm supposed to be I'm learning every step of the way. And there's something, every little piece that every day there's like a new piece to the puzzle that's presented, and I can't see the bigger picture, but I know it's leading to something. So I love, Brenda, what you were just saying about trust and learning to trust in yourself, trust in whatever you want to call it. I call it Gus, God, universe, spirit. Trust that everything is moving in the direction that it needs to for you to fulfill your life's purpose.
And that trust can take some time to build up, can't it? I mean, it's not something that you necessarily just fall into, I'm going to start trusting today. Okay, I'm doing great. It can take a little work to get there.
It took
I think
me a lot of work.
you have to fail enough. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you have to fall on your face enough times. Like, I remember like a year and a half ago in my business, like I was in my business and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm having a lack of abundance that's happening right now. And I called a friend and she's like, congratulations, you're a business owner. Like you've been initiated into, and like being able to have that sort of muscle memory of like, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm always taken care of. And, I know that because I've had nothing before. And then all of a sudden it's shown up. Like you have to develop a trust. It's a muscle.
Mm-hmm. You want to add to that, Brenda?
Yeah, well, yeah, I just think that the whole falling down, you're so right, Jess. And I mean, it's amazing. It's still a pretty face. I've fallen on mine so many times.
Yeah.
Yep. And I do love this question because I am very pragmatic. And so even though I gave this sort of lofty answer of trust, which is not something very tangible, in certain ways, I got to the level of trust I'm feeling now through some very tangible tools, whether it was, sometimes I'd even do run the worst case scenario. And then once you really run yourself through it and realize you're going to recover, you can kind of let go of it. Or I love, in one of the Abraham Hicks books, I'm sure they talk about this in a lot of places, but I haven't read tons of their stuff. But one of them was like this idea of taking your emotions. They had the list of 22 emotions. So let's say I'm in really high anxiety because I'm in a very stressful time in my life and all I can see is disastrous outcomes, and just try to level up just one. They don't call it going up a ladder, but that's the metaphor that struck me. And like, if I could just go up one more ring to one higher feeling and just hold that for a little bit. And then from there, can I go one higher? And I needed to look at the list because when you're in high anxiety or under a lot of pressure or, just whatever, stressed out for whatever reasons, a lot of times you can't identify how how you feel, it's vague like that. But by looking at that list, I could be like, ooh, no, that's the one. That's how I feel. And now what's one little bit higher and one little bit higher? Because it is through our emotions that we end up getting back to a place of self-love and self-trust. And I would argue that you cannot love yourself without trusting yourself. The same way that works with another. We don't, love somebody we can't trust. And so ultimately it comes together. So if I can just keep going up those ladder rungs and get to love, then I can feel the trust again.
Yeah, that's it. That's good. Well, the only bad part here, I started off the podcast by saying that the one bad piece of news is that Steve Rowell couldn't join us today, but that he got you two lovely ladies to join us instead, which has been wonderful. Now the only bad part is that we're at the end of the show, and I want to keep going.
Oh, no! Oh, no!
But it's been wonderful. Before I lose both of you here, I want you to share with listeners how they can reach out to you each individually as life coaches, and Jess also remind people how they can find your radio show. So Jess, I'll go to you first. How do they find your radio show? How do they reach you as a life coach?
Absolutely. So you can head over to www.1150kknw.com to listen into our radio show if you're not in the greater Seattle area. And you can listen in, you just click listen live, and that's on Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you can adjust from there for your time zone. And then you can find me at www.jessbubbico.com. I am actually teaching an intuition basics class coming up, which is what type of intuitive gifts do you have, and how do you start to tap into and connect with your intuition on a regular basis, on a day-to-day basis, to help guide you in your life and help to develop that trust muscle that we've been talking about in this show and really help to guide you forward on your path. And I'm also teaching a manifesting class, which you can find at www.manifesting-mastermind.com. And it is, both of these classes are online, and the intuition class starts on March 26th. The manifesting class starts on March 20th. And the manifesting class it's all law of attraction, teaching you how to create, become a co-creator in your life and manifest what you desire. So you can head over, check those out. You can find me on Instagram at Jess_Bubbico, Bubbico. And yeah, follow along.
Wow. Is there any place where you aren't located? No, that's too long a question. Sorry.
I don't know. I'm not on the Twitter.
You're not on Twitter. Okay.
I'm not on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. And Brenda, how do they reach out to you too?
So I'm simple. My name is Brenda Florida, right? So my website is brendaflorida.com. My email, I'd love for somebody to email me directly too. So that's just Brenda at brendaflorida.com. On Facebook, I'm Brenda Florida. You can find me on Facebook. I know. Crazy. Now, here's the trick. On Instagram, I'm Lavish Brenda.
Ooh.
Lavish Brenda on Instagram.
That.
But you can find me easily with a name like Brenda Florida. It's pretty easy to find me. So, yeah.
Well, it's also easy to talk to you guys, both of you. I mean, this is just a wonderful kind of conversation to have where I'm getting to know you while hearing your wisdom and hearing all these wonderful things you have to share. And all I can say is thank you, ladies. You guys have been great. I'm going to try to figure out some time when I can get Steve to invite both of you back. We can just have some more conversations because you both have tremendous insights to share, and I really do appreciate it. So, Jess, thank you for taking joy. Absolutely, Brenda. Thank you for joining us and Jess, thank you for joining us as well. You guys have really made this a very, very powerful show, so thank you. Thank you to our live stream audience. Thank you to the podcast listeners as well, and we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.